This is the Louie T Network. You are now officially in the lab room. It's that time again. It's that time again to go hard in the off season, cause we trying to win. We gon' go so hard, we don't take no days off. Hopefully one day it's all gonna pay off.
Hey yo, who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man Louie T aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2017 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out. And I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in X said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, get an aggregate score, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you the viewer out there are in total control, as this is the you pick format, or as I like to call it, the up format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. So really simple process. Few examples: Ravens next, Baltimore next, next Ravens, next Baltimore. You try to stay away from getting too wordy, because again, as these videos are uploaded, I've got people hitting me within 3 to 4 seconds. So it's really, really quick. All right, you want to be efficient. This has been probably one of the cleanest years that I've had doing this. So you guys have done a phenomenal job of getting those comments up and doing it in a way that allows your team to be next if you're first. So just continue to do that. And because you out there have spoken, the Baltimore Ravens are next up in the series. And, you know, as the Ravens fan base likes to say, in Ozzie we trust, and for good reason. This Ravens team, even when they get down, they don't stay down for long, because they find a way to draft very well and to find players that fit the Baltimore Raven way. And this is another draft that just sniffs and smells and has the feel of a very good Baltimore Ravens draft that may help this team propel to the AFC North Division champ title in about 2 or 3 years down the road. I don't know if they're going to have the most immediate impact, but there are some guys here that I look at and I say, okay, these are guys that are going to help moving forward. And this is another one of those drafts where you say, Ozzie Newsome, he did it again. Let's jump into this draft, as I thought it was a very quality draft put forth by the Baltimore Ravens and general manager Ozzie Newsome. And so we start in the first round, 16th overall selection. Alabama cornerback Marlon Humphrey is the selection. This is a guy that I don't think we talked about enough during the draft process leading up to the draft. A lot of guys got a lot more pub. A lot of guys that were climbing up the draft boards got a lot more attention, like a Kevin King. We knew about the top rate, first rate corners in this draft. Guys like Marshawn Lattimore, a guy that wasn't going to be able to perform because of the injury he sustained at his pro day, and the cornerback out of Washington. But a lot of people weren't talking about Marlon Humphrey, and really, I don't know why. Maybe because Alabama is such a good defense, and you can have guys kind of go under the radar because there's so many of those players there playing at such a high level. But make no mistake about it, Marlon Humphrey was one of the better corners in this draft, and let's talk about why. Size. 6 feet, 197 pounds. That's the first pro. That's the going rate for an NFL corner these days. Anything sub 6 feet tall, and we're going to just relegate you to the slot, it seems like these days. There may be a few exceptions to the rule. The Tennessee Titans selected the cornerback out of USC. He's like 5'10", 5'11" on a good day, but most likely right around 5'10" is Adoree Jackson. I think they're going to give him every opportunity to play outside before they make a decision on whether he is strictly a slot corner or not. Generally, you don't spend first round pick on slot corners, so we'll see how that goes. But 6 feet is the going rate. 200 pounds right around there is what Marlon Humphrey stands in, and I think that's like I said, the going rate for an NFL starting outside cornerback. Athleticism, 4'4", 140. He's got the speed and the movement skills necessary to be able to handle the big-time A.J. Greens of the world on the outside, the Antonio Browns, those guys that he's going to see in that tough AFC North division week in, week out. He's got the athleticism and the speed to be able to keep pace with those guys. Physicality, this is probably one of his biggest traits, is that he's a bully as a cornerback. I watched him bully and out-physical the USC wide receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster. I watched him bully a guy that is way faster than him, and if he ever got beat off the line of scrimmage, would have been toast in John Ross in that Washington playoff game. I just saw him bully and manhandle some guys at the line of scrimmage, take their will and their fight from them right off the line of scrimmage and really knock them off their route and made it his job that much easier to win on that particular rep. So this guy's a bully. He'll come up, he'll be physical as a tackler. He'll get physical with receivers who are trying to block him. He's a bully, and I love that about Marlon Humphrey, and I love that about his game. And to me, that's one of his most redeeming qualities, is he's just very, very physical. And again, some receivers don't like to mix it up with corners who are extremely physical. This is one of those guys that I could easily see 3 years down the road, we're looking at him in a Richard Sherman, Darrelle Revis type of realm. Those guys are extremely physical. What people don't understand is that Darrelle Revis, in his heyday, in his prime, extremely physical, would get away with molesting receivers. Richard Sherman, I think of late, has been penalized a little bit more, but he's one of those guys that absolutely physically assaults receivers on plays. I mean, there's that one play last year, I don't know if you remember, where Richard Sherman at the end of the ball game, literally, I think it was against Buffalo, last play of the game, game's on the line, he literally decapitates a receiver. Okay, you can't do that. But that's Richard Sherman. That was Darrelle Revis in his prime. Extremely physical. That's how they won. That's how they made their name in this league. And I think I can see Marlon Humphrey 2-3 years down the road being another one of those types of cornerbacks. Really fluid in space as an ex-pro. Again, just really fluid and solid in his movement skills. Doesn't waste a lot of motion. He's a guy that on the football field is extremely comfortable flipping his hips, turning, running with receivers, shadowing them, doing a really good job of staying in their hip pocket. Like I said, one of those guys that at Alabama, they trusted to just take care of business out on an island. A lot of times he didn't receive help because they knew he could take care of business at the cornerback position. Has closing speed. There's times when he gets beat. We'll talk about that. But he does a good job of closing on those receivers after he's beat. He also does a really good job of planting and driving on the football. You'll see him do that from time to time as well. Does a really good job of closing in on passes after they've been thrown. Receiver seems to have a step on him on a dragger or some kind of crossing route. And all of a sudden, Marlon Humphrey from behind, diving, knocking the football away, incomplete. Does a really good job of closing in on targets as they are looking to catch the football. Keys quarterback's eyes well. The best example I can give you of this, if you turn on the Texas A&M game, there's a play. He's in zone coverage. He's keying quarterback's eyes the entire time. He's outside in a cover 3 look. Really, he's more so in a cover 2 shell, but he's kind of being nosy. He's looking at the quarterback. Quarterback never sees him. There's a corner route being run. Like I said, he's more of in a cover 2 shell, so he's kind of underneath, but he's reading quarterback's eyes. He sags underneath that corner route. Quarterback never sees him, makes a beautiful play on the football, takes a shot, holds on to the rock. Big play in that ball game. Again, that was a close game for about 3 quarters. So that was a huge play early on in that ball game by Marlon Humphreys. Does a great job keying quarterback's eyes and allowing those eyes to take him to the football so that he can make a play. He's coverage diverse. He's a guy that can play. I just told you he was in a cover 2 shell, yet making a play underneath a corner route behind him, so he can play cover 2, cover 3. He can play man-to-man press. He can play man-to-man off. He can play off the football. He can play anywhere you like him to. This is a guy that can give you a number of different looks, and as a defensive coordinator, that's what you want from your star corner, the ability to do whatever you need him to do to allow you to be flexible in what you can call and scheme up as a defensive coordinator. He's a tackling machine, like I told you, physical early on. This is a guy that doesn't miss a ton of tackles. You try to throw a bubble screen and he reads screen, he's gonna run, beat that blocker to the point of attack, get to that ball carrier, get to that receiver, and tackle him for a loss. I think that was another one of those things that I just loved about him, is his aggressive nature. He sees it, he reads it, he goes and he acts upon it. And if you're throwing a bubble screen, if you're trying to set up a wide receiver screen outside and that receiver doesn't get to Marlon Humphrey quick enough and he reads it, he's in the backfield and he's making a play, and he's a guy that does a really good job of wrapping people up or using the sideline as an extra defender and shoving receivers out of bounds. He's got ball skills, 5 INTs over the last 2 years. Remember, we're talking about a redshirt sophomore here. This isn't a guy that played 4 years at Alabama, okay? We're not talking about a Tre'Davious White like at LSU who started for 4 years. This is a guy that only played in 2 seasons at Alabama, but 5 career interceptions. So this guy does have some ball skills attached to him as well as we go to his cons. I talked about Quincy Wilson with the Indianapolis Colts, who I think did this the best of anyone in this draft, and that's just being patient at the line of scrimmage. You want that receiver to declare what it is he's trying to do, where he's trying to go before you open up your hips. The biggest mistake a cornerback can make is to too quickly open up his hips and give away an advantage. If a receiver takes a couple of jab steps to the outside and you as an antsy corner get over anxious and you open up your hips to the outside and he's just trying to get inside on the slant, you're beaten because he's already made you declare to the outside. Now he's got free range to the inside. So you want to be patient as a cornerback. Quincy Wilson does that the best of anyone. He'll let you do all the jabbing and double sticks you want. He's waiting for you to open up and start running in one direction before he declares, okay, now I'm going to turn and run with you. Marlon Humphreys is one of those guys. Marlon Humphrey. I love putting an IES on his name for some reason. Marlon Humphrey is one of those guys that loves to declare early, and you can get him off the line of scrimmage. I saw him beat quite often because he opens up his hips too soon. If you give him a double stick to the outside, he's going to open up his hips to the outside, and now you can get inside if you want it. So he's a guy that just opens up too soon. He needs to be more patient and make the receiver declare what it is he wants to do before he reacts and then opens up his hips. He can be beat deep. And a lot of him getting beat deep, because I just told you he's a 4-1 guy. He can run, all right, in a straight line. His problem is he gets beat off the line of scrimmage. And a lot of times when he gets beat off the line of scrimmage, guys run by him. And sometimes he's not able to make up that ground as quickly. And so I saw him get beat off the line of scrimmage. Not all of them resulted in pass completions, but you can beat Marlon Humphrey off the line. And he's one of those guys that when the ball's in the air and he doesn't necessarily see it, he will panic from time to time. A good example against Clemson in the national championship game. He gets beat by Mike Williams, hog ties him, okay? Never looks for the football. If he did, he might have been able to knock the football away. Just hog ties him, chokes him around the neck and slams him down. Incomplete pass, but they throw the yellow hanky, pass interference. He's a guy that can get beat off the line of scrimmage. I saw John Ross roast him one time, but the pressure that they were putting on Jake Browning in that game was insane. He was not comfortable. You could tell he was flustered. John Ross had Marlon Humphrey beat for a touchdown, and Jake Browning never even gave it a look. So you can beat him off the line of scrimmage and get him deep. I think a lot of teams in the division are probably looking at Marlon Humphrey and saying, we can beat this guy deep. If we give him a double move, we think he'll be over-aggressive and bite on it. If he comes up and tries to challenge AJ Green, he's going to get beat. If he tries to come up and challenge Antonio Brown, he's going to get beat deep. A lot of teams are looking at him and saying, hey, we can beat this guy deep. We're going to see if the Ravens can coach him up and help him prevent from giving up the deep ball. And he'll panic at times. That's the last con, and I've kind of already touched on that. But just to quickly recap, he's a guy that when you beat him off the line of scrimmage, a lot of times he will panic. He will not look for the football. He will face guard. And again, that's another thing that can lead to problems down the road for Marlon Humphrey if he is not careful. Again, just some little fine-tuned tweaks that he needs to make to his game. But again, one of those guys, and we know Ozzie Newsome, an Alabama graduate himself, loves these Bama boys. Here's another guy that he elected to take in the first round, 16th overall selection, cornerback out of Alabama, Marlon Humphrey. For me, is it hard? He's hit deep. Out of here. It's a home run for the Baltimore Ravens in the first round with a cornerback that I didn't think we talked about enough, but had all of the credentials and talent to be a first-round pick in Marlon Humphrey. And so the Ravens get on the board with a first-round home run as we move to their second-round selection, 47th overall. Houston edge rusher Tyus Bowser is the selection. This is a guy that I look at as a height, weight, speed specimen. 6'3", 247, 4'6", 40, 37.5-inch vert. You got a broad of 10'5", and then he's got 33-inch arms to go with all of that. So this is a well put together football player we're talking about here, and a guy that I believe still has some growth left in him. Probably can put on a little bit, even though a lot of people feel like he's not going to be able to put on any more weight. I think he can still put some more weight on his frame, and I think he may not even be quite done in terms of his growth and development. So I think there's a lot to like here with Tyus Bowser, and I think that's probably what intrigues the Ravens the most. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but that's the first pro. He's a height, weight, speed specimen with all the specifications that I just gave you in terms of speed, explosiveness, and length. This is a guy that has all of that in his package. Explosiveness. This is a guy that is very explosive off the football. Still doesn't really know what he's doing yet. Very green, wet behind the ears, breath smelling like Similac. So he's still got a lot of things to work on, but explosiveness, either you have it or you don't. You can't teach that. Tyus Bowser has it. He explodes off the ball from time to time, and so that's something else I feel like he needs to tap into a little bit more as his career progresses at the next level. Fluidity in space. I was amazed because when you look at him, he's a long, wiry defender. You're thinking to yourself, okay, he may be able to move a little bit, but you don't trust him out in space versus, say, a running back out of the backfield. You may allow him to run with a tight end, but you don't want him over a receiver in the slot, do you? I saw him do all of the above. I saw him run with the running back out of the backfield. Now, there were times where the running back got the football. He didn't look for the football and it was a completion, but he was right there step for step with the back 20 yards down the field, which is amazing for a guy his size. I saw him cover tight ends in the slot like a blanket. And then I saw him run with some receivers in the slot as well. So I was amazed at just how fluid he was, how well he moved out in space 10, 15, even 20 yards away from the line of scrimmage. Asked to change direction and run with these guys that are shifty in the slot. And I thought he did a remarkable job of keeping pace with these guys. Again, I didn't expect that when I turned on the tape, but what I got was something totally different than what I assumed I was going to get when I watched him on tape. So that was something that really blew me away. Solid coverage defender. I kind of just touched on that, but you can ask him to drop in the zone. Zone is one thing. Anybody can play zone defense. You key quarterback's eyes, get depth in your drop, play guys when they come in your zone and zone match. Anybody can do that. You don't have to be the best athlete to do that. Just need instincts. To be in man-to-man coverage is a totally different story, and this guy can do that. And again, I wasn't expecting that when I turned on the tape. Versatility. This is a guy that, again, I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I turned on Tyus Bowser tape, but this is a guy that I saw in a two-point stance as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. So you're talking about an edge rusher there. You're talking about a guy that would put his hand in the dirt in a 3-point stance. So you're talking about a defensive end, a base defensive end. Then you're talking about a guy that would line up at linebacker, inside linebacker. He would blitz, he would run, and I just told you he would be in coverage, man-to-man with running backs and linebackers and, tight ends and receivers in the slot. So you're talking about a guy that would do that, and then they would blitz him as well. So they would send him from different angles, different areas. Kind of hard to figure out where 81 would be on the field at all times. So this is a guy that they did a lot of things with at Houston. And again, that made his stock that much more profitable, because if you can do a ton of things, the more you can do, the more likely it is you're going to have a spot on somebody's roster on Sundays in the National Football League. Upside is the final pro. This was a guy that was a basketball player. This was a guy that, is just starting to really come into his own. Wasn't a football guy his entire life. Was more of a basketball player. He even played basketball at Houston the first couple of years on campus. So you're talking about a guy that was a basketball guy that thought maybe the NBA is in my future, and then realizes kind of late in the game, okay, maybe football is more of where my future lies. So this is a guy that is still somewhat raw. The upside here, I don't really like talking about upside because, again, just about every draft pick that is selected, teams feel they have upside. That's why they're selecting them. But in his case, there's so much growth left for Tyus Bowser that I think his progress in the next couple of years, he's one of those guys that you're expecting a huge leap after his rookie season. That year two, that sophomore year, you're expecting a monumental leap, because I think the shock of the NFL and guys moving at a much faster rate of speed, all those things, he's gonna have to adjust. But that second year, when he gets comfortable, that's when you're expecting him to take that monumental leap and him become an impact player for you. I could see that being the case for Tyus Bowser down the road, but the upside, I think, is tremendous for him as we go to his cons. He's raw. Okay, and in saying that, this is the bigger problem I have with him, watching him on tape. The production doesn't meet the talent, okay? He's so talented, he's so gifted, he has so many of the traits you look for in an NFL edge rusher slash linebacker slash coverage linebacker that you expected more out of him. The numbers don't necessarily meet the talent. And that's a problem for many evaluators. That's a problem for me. When I see a guy with this much talent, when I watch him on tape, I expect to see more plays being made by him. I expect him to stand out on tape more often than I got with him. I see the talent. I know the value of having a guy that is this talented and wanting to get your hands on him as a coach. But I didn't see the talent meet the production. And that's a problem for me, because you should be able to dominate a little, especially you playing in the, what do they play in the AAC? I mean, you're Houston. You should be dominating the competition. I didn't see that from him as often as I would have liked to. He needs to use his hands and his length more. Sometimes I don't think he realizes he's a longer defender, that you can use these. I tell defenders this all the time. You can use these. This isn't soccer, okay? You can use your hands. They're a vital weapon for you as a pass rusher, and he just doesn't use them enough for me. So again, that's another one of those technical flaws right now in his game, but it's easily coachable. He's gonna have to learn how to use his hands and use his length to his advantage to be a much better pass rusher, because I think he could be a much better pass rusher than I saw on tape. And then finally, this is something that I don't really want to harp on too much. I don't know the details behind the situation, but he got in a fight with a teammate. And in that fight, he ends up sustaining an orbital injury. It cost him like 4 or 5 games last year. This is a guy that ended up with like 8.5 sacks, but he missed like 4 or 5 games due to an injury that he sustained getting in a fight with a teammate. Now, you don't want to bring cancers into your locker room. And again, I don't know the details of this situation and altercation that took place with him and another teammate, but you never want altercation with teammates to come to blows, okay? Normally you would love to see that be resolved without anyone getting hurt, especially sustaining an injury that's gonna cost one of your best defenders 4 or 5 games. That's a problem for me. So that's something that I'm pretty sure the Ravens got to the bottom of before they made this selection. But again, you don't want them coming into the locker room and getting into it with any of your teammates. But that being said, there's a lot of talent here. In the second round, 47th overall selection, Houston edge rusher, Tyus Bowser for me is a triple. The upside here is what got me, okay? If you're going straight off of production, he's a double. But if you're looking at the man and what he brings to the table and how multifaceted he is, I think that this guy's got tremendous upside at the next level. A word that I really don't like to use very often, but he's got it. I see it. And again, a wise man once told me, son, your potential is gonna get me fired. He's one of those guys that I look at and I say that he could fit right into that mold and into that saying, but the talent is undeniable here with Tyus Bowser. And because of that, he is a triple for me for the Ravens in the second round. As we move to their third round selection, they had 2 of these, and this is where the Ravens really make dents into into the draft and really help themselves for the future, is in these mid rounds. Anybody can hit a first or a second rounder. It's the third, it's the fourth, it's the fifth round guys that are really gonna separate you in this league and help you really build a strong roster throughout. And here's a guy that, to me, is just a glue guy. In the third round, 74th overall selection, Michigan defensive lineman Chris Wormley is the selection. 6'5", 298 is where we start, first pro size. A big guy, has some girth, has the ability to play multiple positions. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So yeah, right there, size is key for him. Length, 34-inch arms, able to extend. He does a really good job of locking his arms out, extending those arms and getting good leverage out of those arms. So again, his length is the key because he uses that length. Unlike Tyus Bowser, who also has length but doesn't use it, this is a guy in Chris Wormley who uses his length to his advantage. His power is an ex-pro. His biggest tool that he uses is his bull rush. And again, he extends those arms, locks them out, uses them for leverage, and then uses that to pile drive offensive linemen into the backfield and try to make plays. A good arm extension and hand usage. I basically told you about his extension on the arms. Does a really good job of using his hands. Unlike Tyus Bowser, who doesn't use his hands, again, doesn't use his arms and his length. This is a guy that is the complete opposite. Uses his arms, extends them, gets good extension on them, and also uses his hands. Will hand fight with offensive linemen in the trenches to help him get to the ball carrier. Very stout at the point of attack is the next pro. A guy that will set a physical edge if he's outside as a 5-tech. A guy that inside on the interior will do a good job of holding up against guards, and even sometimes on those double teams, he'll do a good job of standing his ground, using that length and that leverage to hold up blockers and really muck up the inside on run plays. He's versatile. That's the next pro. A 5-tech or a 3-tech in passing situations. He's not going to win with a swim or a spin. He's not going to be one of these guys that is a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing pass rusher, but what he will do is come at you with brute force and bull rush. Now, will he be able to get away with that at the next level? That's one of the concerns that a lot of scouts have. I can't answer that. We'll see if his strength translates to the next level, but he is the guy that can't collapse the pocket. So in passing situations, when you want to get a guy like Tim Williams, who you drafted, that we're going to talk about here in a little while, on the field on a 3rd down, along with T. Sizzle and some other guys that you feel comfortable getting after the quarterback, you want to kick him inside to the 3-tech to try to get pressure, and he can collapse the pocket. You can do that, or in base packages where you want him to just set a physical edge in the run game as a defensive end, you stick him at 5-tech and he can do that. So there's some versatility here with Chris Wormley for sure. And also, as his final pro, he moves well down the line, and in the TE game, I think he is phenomenal. So let's tackle those one at a time. He does a really good job of flowing down the line and trying to get to the ball carrier. If he's the unblocked defender and the play's going away from him, he comes down the line very fluidly. If they're running a stretch play, he does a really good job of stringing that play out, coming down the line and trying to cut off that backside cutback and have good backside pursuit on the back ball carrier. And then also in the TE game, when they run those tackle end stunts, I think he does a great job of looping around, either eating up blockers to allow that end to come inside and get the sack, or in his own right, coming around, looping around and stunting to the outside, or even to the inside when he's on the outside as an end and trying to get inside. He does a good job of muscling his way through double teams and beating guys to the punch and getting to the quarterback. So I think he does a really good job of tight, efficient stunts and twists in the TE game, and does a good job of stringing out plays and coming down the line and try to cut off backside cutbacks for running backs. So you go from his pros to his cons. He's a do-your-job type of player. And you say to yourself, what the hell's wrong with that? The Patriots have a sign in their locker room that says, do your job. Yeah, that's great. But sometimes you want guys to go outside of the box and do a little bit more. And that's not what Chris Wormley is. He's not a guy that's going to go above and beyond the call of duty to make a play. If all 11 guys on a particular play do their job, then guess what? If that play's drawn up to get you 7 yards, it's going to get 7 yards. You need an extraordinary effort from someone to turn a 7-yard play into a 77-yard play. Okay? Generally speaking, that's how that goes. So he's not a guy that's gonna go out and beat a tackle, run over the running back, grab the quarterback with one arm and sling him down to the turf for an 8-yard sack. That's not Chris Wormley. What he's gonna do, he's gonna engage that tackle. He's gonna hold him up. He may push and pull him, discard him. If that running back's there, that running back should be able to do just enough to stop Chris Wormley from getting to the quarterback, okay? He's the do-your-job type of guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. You need glue guys on your team. He's just not going to fill up the stat sheet. He's not going to be he's one of those guys that you're going to say at the end of the season, you can't tell his value on the stat sheet. He's one of those types of players. Not overly explosive. He's not dynamic. I told you, he's not going to be aesthetically pleasing as a pass rusher. Again, not a bunch of moves. He's pretty much brute force and strength. And again, a lot of people question whether that's going to translate from the Big Ten to the NFL. We're going to see, because if it does, then he's going to be a really good player for you. If it doesn't, he's just going to be another rotational depth defensive lineman. So in the third round, 74th overall selection, Michigan defensive lineman Chris Wormley for me is a double. I heard he's a great locker room guy. I can't confirm nor deny that, but if they tell me he is, I'll take them at face value. I see a guy that is good, not great. He does nothing exceptionally well, does a lot of things good. And so that's fine. And I think he's going to come in, help you stop the run, and occasionally get some pressure on the quarterback. As we move on to a guy that I think is going to be an impact player, and a huge one at that. And I think this is one of the better steals and value picks in any draft, not just the Ravens draft, but any draft in 2017, third round, 78th overall selection. Alabama edge rusher Tim Williams is the selection. Again, another Alabama guy. Ozzie Newsome loves Alabama football players. If you're a Ravens fan, you know exactly what I mean. 6'3", 244 is his size, but the first pro is explosion and length. Tim Williams, to me, is the most explosive pass rusher in this draft, aside from the #1 overall selection. And of course, this is a guy that I think might be the most natural pass rusher, okay? We all know Myles Garrett is extremely explosive. He's a big guy, yada, yada, yada. But Tim Williams, to me, is the most explosive in combination with being a pure pass rusher. I don't think Myles Garrett is necessarily a pure pass rusher. I think he's a really good pass rusher with a lot of moves that can really impact the game in a number of ways. That's where Tim Williams kind of falls off the wagon a bit. His size isn't what Garrett's size is. He's not able to do the things that Garrett is able to do in the run game, but we'll talk about all of those things a little bit later on. But his explosion, it's the kind that's going to potentially make him an impact player for this Ravens football team. Because look, we can sit here and talk about the lack of exploits in the run game and his size and all those things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But this league is about passers and being able to affect them. All right. If you've got a great quarterback and you got guys that can go hunt the quarterback, you got a good ass shot at getting it done in this league. Okay. It's the teams that struggle at the quarterback position. It's the teams that struggle to go and get the other team's quarterback that struggle routinely in this league. You want to separate yourself from the Pittsburgh Steelers, from the Cincinnati Bengals, from the Cleveland Browns. You need to be able to affect the passer. I don't think the Ravens have done that enough over the last couple of years. They had a nice little run there, and it was brief, with Elvis Dumervil and T. Sizzle when they were both healthy, which seemed like never at the same time. This is a guy that we see T. Sizzle getting up there in age. He's not going to be able to do it forever. And there seems to be an injury every other year or so that's catastrophic. You're going to need to replace his production as a quarterback bagger at some point. Here's a guy that I think can do it. The 33-inch length, always a big plus when your guys have a little bit of length, because those tackles out on the edge, they got a lot of length. A lot of length to spare. You got to have some as well to be able to combat their length and get to the quarterback. Pure pass rusher is the next pro. To me, if there's nothing else you love about Tim Williams, it's just the fact that this dude's a pure pass rusher. He sets guys up. There's a mental game that he's playing with the tackle. You can tell that he's out there thinking, okay, all right, I've went outside the last 4 rushes on third down. Look, I'm going to take a hard outside, back inside approach this time. All right, and get him off balance. There's a mental game being played. I think him and TJ Watt of the Steelers are two guys that really set up tackles, and they're actually putting together a game plan as to how they think they can get to the quarterback. That's rare for college football players, because a lot of times they just win with athleticism. They don't actually put together a rush plan. Tim Williams, to me, pure pass rusher, setting guys up for the future when he's trying to get to the quarterback. You don't see that from collegiate players that often. Able to bend and shorten the edge. There's nothing more exciting about an edge rusher than a guy that can shorten the edge. It's one thing that a guy that can run up the field and that quarterback drops back and he can get around at 7 yards. That's too far. Okay, that's great. But you want a guy that can shorten that edge and get to the quarterback in 5 yards. Okay, by beating that tackle, bending at the knees, bending that hip, and ducking and shortening that edge, and instead of running that arc and that loop at 7 and trying to get back to the quarterback who can just step up, you shorten that edge, cut down that amount of space, and get to him in 5 where he can't step up and elude your rush from the outside. Tim Williams has the ability to do that as well. He's got a fastball and a changeup. He doesn't have a move Rolodex, okay? He's not flipping through a bunch of moves, okay, spin this time, all right, bull rush this time. He's got a fastball, and that's just pure, unadulterated speed and explosiveness off the edge, like he shot out of a cannon. And then he comes with an inside move off of that as a counter. So that's a beautiful combination. I told you, in order to be dynamic as a pass rusher, you don't need to have 8 moves. It's great if you do, but you don't have to. If you got a fastball, hey, Mariano Rivera, for years, had a fastball and he had an out pitch. That's all you need, okay, to be a Hall of Famer in this league is fastball and a counter off of that. And if you got 2 things that are equally dominant, you can get it done at this level at a very high rate of efficiency. And that's what Tim Williams has. He's an improved edge setter. No, he's not the greatest setting the edge in the run game, but he's gotten better. He's making a more concerted effort to be a little bit more physical, to use his length, to keep offensive linemen out of his body, to allow him to engage and then disengage and get to the ball carrier. So he's still got work to do. And I don't know how much bigger he can get frame-wise, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But bottom line is he's getting better as a run defender, and that's music to your ears if you're a Ravens fan, because right now I think he's looked at as a situational pass rusher, but down the road maybe you'll be able to trust him on the field on 1st and 2nd downs where the opposition may try to run it. And then finally, he's a red belt hand usage type of guy. No, he's not a black belt. All right, he's not supremely gifted in hand usage like some of the best. I still contend that Joey Bosa had the best hands I've ever seen of a guy coming out of the draft from the collegiate ranks. In terms of just using his hands to win and defeat a block, he's nowhere near that. But he is a red belt, and red belt is right before black belt. So in essence, he does a good job. Okay, a really good job of using his hands. It's just not great, but at least he acknowledges that these do help in trying to get to the quarterback, and that's key. And that's half the battle, is acknowledging that your hands are just as good as having movements to get to the quarterback. And so he's a guy that does acknowledge that in his rush. As we go to his cons, his frame is the first one. I mean, you look at him, he's 6'3", 244. He's a really slenderly built guy. He's lanky, reminds me a lot of Aldon Smith coming into the league. When he came out of Mizzou, Aldon Smith looked like a guy, and I was not an Aldon Smith fan because I said, look at this guy, what could he possibly do? And he had that wiry frame strength, did Aldon Smith. I don't necessarily see that from Tim Williams, but you wonder, can he sustain in the run game? You wonder if this guy is going to be able to last in terms of being a guy that could potentially use a bull rush move down the road. Is he a guy that can only play in 3rd down situations as a situational pass rusher, or can he get on the field on 1st and 2nd down? Can he put on more weight? I don't think that's the case. A lot of people don't think I don't think he's going to be able to put on. And you look at his frame, I don't think Tim Williams carries weight. And remember, a lot of people were disappointed with his combine because they thought he would run a lot faster, and he didn't. If you put on weight on him, that's not going to make him any more explosive. It's going to slow him down, because I don't think naturally he's supposed to be above 245. Okay, so I think Tim Williams is what he is, and we'll see if he can put on weight. But right now, his frame is a question for some people, not for me. I think he's a pass rusher, if nothing else. If he's never on the field on 2nd and 1st and 2nd down, I don't give a damn, because I still think he's the guy that can get you 10.5, 12.5, 14.5 sacks in any given season, just coming on the field in known passing situations. So I have no problems with that. Is he a 3-down player is the next con? I don't really need to elaborate. I just kind of went through that with the frame thing. Just know, look, if he could just back quarterbacks, you'll take it all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. And then finally, the off-the-field issues. This is the only reason he's here in the 3rd round. This is why this is a steal, is because teams were concerned about the off-the-field exploits of Tim Williams. There's known multiple failed drug tests. He admitted that at the combine. He said, look, I made a lot of mistakes in my life. I had to grow as a human being. I made mistakes. I'm here to fess up to them. I'm not afraid to tell you that, yeah, I failed a ton of drug tests at Alabama. And so I got to clean that up. But at the end of the day, I'm a good dude, and I'm getting better as a person, and I'm learning from my mistakes, and I'm going to be better in the future. All you can do is go off of his word, and if he says he's going to be better, you hope that's the case. I think there was also a gun situation with him, but bottom line, if you can get him to stay clean off the field, and again, you're hoping that he didn't turn into the kid the Cowboys took in the 3rd round out of Nebraska a couple of years ago that just hasn't been able to really play, Randy Gregory. You're hoping he didn't turn into one of those guys. He didn't fail a test at the combine like Randy Gregory did. So you're hoping Tim Williams is a guy that can play for you and isn't in the drug program and isn't suspended, 2 years into his career, already 4-game suspension for testing for marijuana, testing positive for marijuana. But we'll see. Bottom line is, you're talking pure pass rusher. You're talking about a guy that can bag quarterbacks. You're talking about Tim Williams. And in this league, and I just said it and I'll say it once more, it's about passers and being able to affect passers. The reason the Falcons couldn't win Super Bowl 51 is because they couldn't get to Tom Brady in the second half of the game. When they harassed the hell out of him in the first half, they were able to build that 28-3 lead. When they couldn't get to Tom Brady because the defense was gassed, Tom Brady ate him up and executed one of the greatest comebacks in Super Bowl history. So it's about affecting passes. It's as simple as that. You get to the quarterback, you're going to have a great chance of winning. I don't care how great that quarterback is. You don't get to the quarterback, you're going to be in trouble. The Ravens need to get to the quarterback. And in the 3rd round, 78th overall selection, Alabama edge rusher Tim Williams. For me, is it all? He's hit deep. You can put him on the board. Yes! It's a home run for the Baltimore Ravens. To me, this is a steal. You're getting a guy that can get after the quarterback in the 3rd round. To me, who was no less a 2nd round pick. You get him midway through the 3rd. To me, this is tremendous value in a guy that I think in year 1 can get you 8 sacks right off the bat. So Tim Williams for me, big steal for the Ravens. Love this selection as we move on to the 4th round. 122nd pick overall. San Diego State offensive lineman Nico Siragusa is the selection. Let's start there with the surname. No, he's not related to Tony Siragusa. I know you Ravens fans remember Goose down there in the trenches for you and one of the greatest defenses this league has ever seen, those 2000 Ravens. However, no, he is not related to Tony Siragusa, so let's just get that out of the way right now. But what he is a big guy that has some size and some length. At 6'4", 319, he's a big guy, burly guy. Also has 33-inch arms inside at the guard position. So this guy has some size, has some length. He's a sneaky athlete. That's the next pro. You look at him and you say, this guy's probably not going to be that good of an athlete. And he's not a great athlete, but he's got some movement skills. And he's got a 32-inch vert, which was one of the best at the combine at his position. A 9'1" broad, again, one of the best at his position at the combine. And 20-yard shuttle, one of the best, again, at the combine. So this is a guy in short spaces can get the job done. When you ask him to get to the 2nd level, you ask him to get to that reach block, that's when we start running into issues. But as a pulling guard, I thought he was phenomenal in those short, tight spaces. When he would come and get that skip pull and get out there, I thought he would do a great job of contacting that guy at the first level and getting to that first initial block and opening up some holes. Look, you don't have the type of career that their running back at San Diego State was able to put forth, Donnell Pumphrey, and become one of the greatest rushers in college football history without guys in front of you opening up some gaping holes. Nico Siragusa, one of the most consistent guys in front of Pumphrey for the duration of his career. Powerful at the point of attack, 28 reps of 2 1/4. Again, another benchmark for guys at that position at the combine. It's a big guy, and speaking of which, he's a man mover in the run game. I watched him take some guys, pick them up, uproot them, move them 3-4 yards, creating a new line of scrimmage. He's a really good job of taking and turning his ass and turning out guys out of the hole and opening up a hole so that Donnell Pumphrey would know exactly how to cut off of his block. Does a really good job of taking and turning all defensive linemen and turning them out of the hole and creating space. So he's a man mover in the run game, which is where I think he really excels in the run game. anchors really well in the pass game, does a good job of sinking those heels into the dirt and not allowing guys to jack him up, put him into the lap of the quarterback. And then I talked about him being one of the stalwarts of Donnell Pumphrey's career at San Diego State, where he was able to amass all of those yards and become one of the greatest rushers in NCAA history. 41 consecutive starts over the last 3 years for Nico Siragusa. So again, a guy that is on the field. And again, the best ability is availability. You're durable. You're able to play week in, week out. There's nothing more satisfying to a team than knowing they can rely on a guy to suit them up, lace them up, and put the shoulder pads and helmet on and go out there and perform week in and week out. You go to his cons. He'll stand upright out of his stance. And there's a play that I can think of that comes to mind when I think of him standing straight up and allowing that to get him blown back. You lose your leverage when you stand straight up as an offensive lineman. And they're playing against Wyoming. And Donnell Pumphrey takes a handoff. And Nico Siragusa stands straight up. And a linebacker kind of runs into him, backs into him, and just kind of backs Nico Siragusa up because he lost his leverage because he stood straight up. This linebacker comes rambling into him, backs him into the backfield, and before Donnell Pumphrey could actually get his hands on the ball good, Nico Siragusa is steamrolling right into him. Boom, ball comes free. Wyoming recovers the fumble. So he needs to make sure that he comes out of his stance explosively, but make sure that he doesn't come out of his stance upright. Guys love to stand up. It's a natural occurrence, okay? If you're in a stance, the first thing you want to do is stand up. You have to teach yourself muscle memory to come out and come out with leverage and come out low. Low man wins in the NFL, especially in the trenches. And sometimes he'll get out of his stance and come up upright. And that'll get him in trouble a lot of times. He struggles to get to the reach block in the second level defenders. Like I told you, he's a solid athlete, sneaky athlete, but he's not a great one. Those reach blocks, those second level defenders really do a good job of just avoiding him. It's tough for him to get to those blocks. So again, he's a phone booth brawler. He's a guy that in tight confined spaces wins. You get him outside that phone booth and you start asking him to do things, now you're asking for trouble. But Nico Siragusa, for me, I just loved watching him. Physical, nasty streak, moves guys out of the way. This is a Ravens team that hasn't run the football as well as they would have liked to the last 2 or 3 years strong. Here's a guy that's going to instantly come in, and I think he's going to compete for a guard spot. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to help you improve your run game right off the bat. In the 4th round, 122nd overall selection, San Diego State offensive lineman Nico Siragusa for me is a triple. Love what he brings to the table. Think he's going to be a phenomenal addition to this Ravens offensive line. It's tough in this league to draft guys, develop them, and keep them. You lost Kelechi Osemele. Here's a guy that could come in and maybe replace him. And it's hard to replace those types of players. Osemele signed a huge deal to go to the Raiders a season ago. Now you need to replenish this offensive line. Here's a guy I think that could help you do that. Speaking of which, here's another guy that you're looking to develop over time and see if he can't help you along this offensive line in the 5th round. 159th overall selection, Texas A&M offensive lineman Jermaine Illuminor is the selection. Now here's a guy that is extremely raw. We'll talk about him. 6'4", 332. So talked about big man with Nico Siragusa. Here's an even bigger man in Jermaine Illuminor. 6'4", 332. That's where we start. Size. He's a big man. He's strength. He's a big, physical, strong guy. 34 reps of 2 1/4. Nico Siragusa was 28. This guy's 34 reps. So you're talking about, and again, you expect these guys with shorter arms to be able to pump that iron up a bunch of times, but this is a guy that is a big, long-armed guy. So again, physical, strong at the point of attack, really solid punch. Watched him in the SEC against Alabama, watched him in a number of games against Tennessee. This is a guy that has a really solid punch that can knock guys off balance. So that's something else that he can use to his advantage. He's got some versatility, right guard, right tackle, can play either one. I don't see him necessarily being a guy that's a right tackle at the next level. But we'll see. We'll figure that out together. Upside. Again, I don't like to use that word very often, but here's why. Let's just get to his cons. I'll talk about why he's got upside. So you can look at it as in 2 ways: upside or raw. Okay, he's inexperienced and he's raw. Okay, that's the first con. This is a guy that only started 12 times. One season, 12 starts at Texas A&M. Here's a guy that he comes from England. He played rugby, so he's not really familiar with the way the American football game is structured, and he's learning on the fly. I thought he did a phenomenal job for a guy that came over after going to school in England for a couple of years, finished out his 2 years at Texas A&M, and started his final year while on campus. And this is a guy that I just feel like, and this is his final con, but it's a damning one, lacks feel, instincts, and total knowledge of the game. There are times where you just see him and he's out of sorts, and you could kind of tell he just got a long way to go. All right, he's got some things he's got to learn, and he's learning on the fly. And this is, like I said, this is a guy that came over from England, across the pond. He's just really being exposed to the game. A lot more for him to learn and really kind of take in. And so this is a guy that I think has a lot to learn and can get better. I don't think his feet are very quick. I don't think that he's a guy that is extremely athletic. So I think it's going to be tough for him on the outside. When he gets his hands on you, though, you're done. So that's something good for him. I think he may be better off as a guard. He may be able to survive outside with a little bit more fine tuning and technique and him just getting a better feel. Twists and stunts give him fits. Again, these are all things because there's a lack of feel and instincts. Just knowledge of what defenses are trying to do to him that he struggles with. They send an overload blitz to his side. He blocks nobody because it's a lot for his mind to process. Do I take the guy going inside? Do I push the guy around that's going outside? How about you do neither? Okay, and it's always take away the most critical threat. Okay, that's the guy you want to take away. The guy to the inside is going to be the one that's probably going to give you the most trouble. He's got the straightest line to the quarterback, so you want to at least give him a piece of a shoulder and then try to push the guy on the outside. He didn't give me anything. So again, there's a lack of feel and instincts and just overall knowledge of the game. So this guy to me developmental all the way. Don't even expect him to make the team his first go round. Practice squad player that you work with and see if you can get something out of him down the road in the 5th round, 159th overall selection. Texas A&M offensive lineman Jermaine Illuminor for me is a double. There's some stuff here to work with. It just needs to be worked with. All right, as we get to the final pick in this draft, 6th round, 186th overall selection, Virginia Tech defensive back Chuck Clark is the selection. 6 feet, 208 pounds. That's solid size. As we get to his first pro, solid size and athleticism, 4.54 40 for Chuck Clark. So he can run a little bit, got some size. He's a physical guy, will come down, tackle. But you know what I like? The physicality is the next pro, but let's combine that with the next. He's a patient defender. All right, this is a guy that is very methodical in his movement on the football field. We've all seen the guy. As a matter of fact, you have a safety on your team right now in Eric Weddle, who loves to come down aggressively, very physical, wants to come down, bat out of hell, but you miss tackles that way, okay? For every good tackle that you have coming down fast and ferocious and furious, there's a missed tackle in there somewhere for most guys like that. Chuck Clark is really methodical. Now, sometimes you can be a little passive aggressive when you wait and you're patient, but a lot of times you're gonna get guys on the ground when you are able to break down, come under control, and wrap up. That's what he does. Speaking of which, reliable tackler is the next pro. To me, he's one of those guys that if he's the last line of defense for you, you feel confident that, hey, look, Chuck may not make a play, but Chuck's gonna get that guy on the ground and take that 32-yard gain and keep it at 32 and not allow it to be 62 and a touchdown. So he's a reliable tackler. He gives you some versatility. I watched him against Tulsa play corner. Now, he was horrible, but he played corner. He's a guy that plays safety, and I think that's more of a natural position for him as a safety. I don't really like him as a corner, so I look at him and I just purely look at him as a safety. I don't even want him dropping down in the slot. I look at him as more of a strong safety, a guy you put in the box. But I don't know if his size says that he's that kind of defender. I really look at him as a special teams guy. He's one of those guys, a backup into the roster safety that you really don't want playing unless you sustain a number of injuries, but he's gonna be a core special teamer for you. And so you want him on the roster because he can double as a safety, but really is a big help to you on special teams. And anybody that comes from Virginia Tech, and I know that Beamer ball is dead. There's no more Frank Beamer, even though he still has an influence on that program. Anybody that comes from Virginia Tech, I expect you to excel at the special teams game. And I'm putting that emphasis on Chuck Clark if he wants to make this Ravens roster. As we go to his cons, no discernible trait for Chuck Clark. Nothing stands out. Not one thing he does, I say, damn, you do that extremely well. Nothing. And so, again, that's a problem when I look at you and there's not one thing I can say, man, you do that extremely well, man. That's going to be your calling card at the next level. There are no discernible traits. Nothing stands out about Chuck Clark nor his game. To me, he's got iffy ball skills and coverage ability. Like I told you, I watched him against Tulsa, and that might have just been a bad game for him, but he was horrible in coverage in that game. Now, I watched him against Cincinnati in the bowl game in 2015. He looked a lot, or 2014, I don't remember, but he looked a lot better in that game. So it just all depends on what you're looking at. I feel like he's much better as a safety. I watched him in 2016 in 2 different games. Once against Boston College, I saw him come up, lay the wood on a guy, on a running back, boom, hits him, ball comes free. And they ended up, that was early in the game, and it led to a touchdown, and the route was on after that. So I think he's got some solid qualities as a safety, more so than a defensive back and a corner. More specifically, I like my Chuck Clark at safety and playing special teams, and I think that's what the Ravens view him as well. And so in the 6th round, 186th overall selection, Vatek defensive back Chuck Clark for me is a double to round out this Ravens draft that I thought was another quality haul by one of the better GMs in all the league in Ozzie Newsome. They do it well up in Baltimore, and I think this is another quality draft. Let's get to their scoring to see how they were able to do in this draft. You get 2 home runs with Marlon Humphrey and Tim Williams, both Alabama boys. We know how much Ozzie Newsome loves the Bama boys and loves to select them. Then you get 2 triples with Tyus Bowser and Nico Saragusa. And then the other 3 selections are all doubles, which nets you a doubles bonus. You tally all of that up, it's a 22. You divide by the number of selections, 7, and it's a 3.14 triple for the Baltimore Ravens in the 2017 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. That's going to do it for them and me on this particular episode. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and nothing National Football League. I just got one question for you, and by now you should know what it is, but if you don't, I'll ask it anyway. Who's next?